Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. This is part 4 of the look at KHCT buses, Kingston upon Hull City Transport. In part 1 we looked at photographs that I'd taken between the 1980s and the early 2000s. In part 2 we looked at the late council era in 1993. And in part 3 we looked at the Cleveland Transit era around 1994. If you haven't checked those videos out already, please give them a look on my channel. So this part 4 will be the last part for the time being. I'm doing it in October 2023. I have got a few more slides that need to be printed out, but there aren't enough to make a video of at the moment. But I am slowly amassing more slides and photographs, and when I've got enough to do another video, I will probably do a 5th part. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and if you do subscribe you will get a notification when I do the next bit. Probably next year, as I say 2024 somewhere. Before I get enough material to do another one. So in this one we're going to look mainly at the council era in the 1970s, the 1980s and the early 1990s. There are a few photographs from later than that period, a few which should have made it into the last one but I hadn't actually got at the time, and there's one much earlier which we'll see in a moment. So here we go with the earlier one. This is vehicle number 196, registration GKH 377. It's an AEC Regent with brush bodywork and it was new in April of 1942. It's what was called an unfrozen bus. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, or shortly after it broke out, the government stopped production of buses. Any that were in build were ordered to be frozen, i.e. work had to be stopped on them, and the idea of that was that the factories could then concentrate on war-related work instead. However, as the war got going, operators got short of vehicles. They took on extra work to do with the war, moving people to and from army camps and air bases and things like that, and also to and from factories that were engaged in war-related work. And they also lost quite a few buses in bombing raids. That included Hull Corporation. On the 7th of May 1941, the Central Garage, or Ferronsway Garage as it was also known, took a direct hit from an enemy bomb, destroying both the building and 44 buses that were inside. So in 1942, the government decided to unfreeze the buses that were still part built. They allowed the companies to continue building them and to finish them off, and then they were allocated by the government to the people who needed them the most. So it wasn't necessarily the people who had ordered them originally. So this vehicle was actually ordered by Coventry Corporation, and it's got a Coventry Corporation standard body. As I say, built by Brush but to Coventry's specifications. Hence the unusual destination plan layout. It appears to be in wartime grey livery in this shot. It's got the wartime markings on the front mudguards. The lights were masked off, so there was only a very narrow slit of light, and obviously street lights were turned off as well. So to enable people to see the buses coming, they had bits of white painted on them. In 1950 this bus was rebodied using a 1939 body that had been built by Massey Brothers of Wigan. It come off an AEC Regent numbered 173, so that body was taken off and put onto the chassis of GKH 377, and the rebodied bus continued in service until 1963, when it was withdrawn in March of 1963 and then sold for scrap. So we're going to go now in fleet number order through the 70s, 80s and 90s. And we're starting with vehicle number 12, MAT-12P. This was a Ford A-Series minibus, chassis type AO609. And it was fitted with a body by Tricentral of Dunstable in Bedfordshire, who were a coach operator and a car dealer as well as builder of bus bodies. Minibuses had a brief period of popularity in the 1970s, nothing like the one in the 1980s. But they had a brief bit of popularity in about the mid-70s. This vehicle was new in March 1976. It was one of a batch of 5, numbered between 11 and 15. They weren't particularly successful, as you can see by the destination plan. They were used on the service to the pier. The Humber Bridge wasn't open until 1981. Before that, so you had to cross the River Humber by way of a ferry, which ran from the Corporation Pier in Hull across to New Holland in North Lincolnshire. And the shuttle service from the city centre to the pier, numbered 50 as you can see, was run partially by these Ford minibuses. They didn't really find a niche with Hull Corporation. I don't quite know why they bought them. They had quite a short life. This one was withdrawn in January 1981, so just under 5 years after it was bought, and it was sold to a dealer who sold it on to a firm called Leyland Panther of Dronfield in Derbyshire. I'm guessing it was a non-PSV, like a crew transport bus. And then by 1986 it had passed to an operator in Cornwall who broke it up in December of that year. This appears to be an official posed photograph. It's on Beverley Road next to the former Stepney railway station. I'm not quite sure why it was posed. It might have been when it was new, to be fair. But it does appear to be an official posed photograph. You'd struggle to take a photo like that on Beverley Road nowadays with the increased traffic levels. So now we move on to vehicle 52, E52WAG. One of the Kingstonian coach fleet. Just exiting the bus station there. You can see the corner of the offices of KHCT behind, and the depot building, and the Yorkshireman Public House, which I believe still survives actually, and the entire area has been redeveloped around it, but as far as I know that's still there. Just setting off by the look of it on some sort of day tour excursion. As you can see, Kingstonian was quite successful. It's rather full is the bus, with eager and expectant people looking forward to the day out. So 52 was a Volvo B10M with Plaxton Paramount body. It was new in May 1988. In November 1989 it was named Thomas Wilson. Most of the Kingstonian coach fleet were named at some point in their lives. So this must be a photo when it was fairly new, because it isn't carrying the name. It would have been on the front, just underneath where the Plaxton badge is there. So this must have been when it was fairly new in about 1988. You can see an East Yorkshire bus following it out, a Highbridge Bristol VR on the 181 to Hessel. That's still in National Bus Company, poppy red livery, but with the post-privatisation East Yorkshire name on it. There is an East Yorkshire connection with 52. It served in the fleet until March of 1997 when it was sold to East Yorkshire along with the rest of the Kingstonian coach fleet. Stagecoach didn't really see themselves as a coach operator, so they got rid of the Kingstonian operation in 1997. They sold it to East Yorkshire, who amalgamated it into their East Yorkshire Travel, or EYT, operation. Became East Yorkshire Fleet number 146. It was re-registered to EYH 876 in July of 1997. Reverted to E52WAG in February 2005. It was transferred to Whittle Bus and Coach of Kidderminster. They were an East Yorkshire Group subsidiary. So it went down there in June 2006. They registered it RCE 510, and then it was withdrawn in November of 2007. Became E52WAG again, and then it was sold in December 2007 to Tees Valley of Marske on Tees side. And they sold it in May 2009, and its subsequent purchase, if there was one, isn't recorded. Incidentally, I don't intend to go into the full subsequent history of all the vehicles. I've got quite a lot of photos to show in this video, and we'll be here all day if I do that, but I'll tell you the more interesting ones. So now we're looking at vehicle 72. That's the fleet number it's carrying in this shot. I'll explain in a moment. It appears again to be an official posed photograph. It's at Queen's Gardens in the centre of Hull by the look of it. Again, I'm not quite sure why it was posed. It may have been shortly before its withdrawal. It was one of the last ones of these in service. It's a Leyland Panther with row body work. It was new in December of 1964 as fleet number 172. As you can see, registration BKH 172B. It was one of the first Leyland Panthers to be built. I think it was about the second one off the production line. And as a result, it was displayed at Earls Court Motor Show when it was new. It was loaned to Southport Corporation between April and June of 1965 to allow them to evaluate the type. They must have liked it because they did order some Leyland Panthers. And it came back to Hull and settled down to work. It was renumbered 72 in February of 1967. And it was withdrawn in January of 1982. As I say, it was one of the last of the Panthers still in service in Hull. They had 12 of them altogether. And it went from KHCT straight to the Hull Transport Museum. It's now called Street Life Museum. I believe they still own it. As far as I know, it's not on display at the moment. It's in the store. But as far as I know, it still exists. It's still in the Hull Transport Museum, or should I say the Street Life Museum. As I say, looking at this, it does appear to be an official shot. Given the condition of the bus, it's not just been painted or anything. It may well be just before it was withdrawn. As I say, it was one of the last ones of the Leyland Panthers to be in service. I don't really remember these, what they worked on. The only memory I've got of them is going down to the bus station with my dad when I was very, very young. I'd have been about 4 years old. I remember him saying we were going to see the last Panther. I didn't understand what he meant, but we went down and I was really surprised to see a single deck bus in the Hull blue and white colour. I'd only seen double deckers before, so that shows you they didn't appear very often, or certainly I hadn't noticed them anyway. And I remember getting on it. We sat somewhere near the back and we went somewhere and went back to the bus station on it, as far as I'm aware. I can't remember where we went, but I do remember seeing it drive off, so we must have gone back to the bus station and then it drove off on its next run past us. I'm guessing that was in early 1982, and it may well have been this bus. As I say, it was one of the last couple that survived. So the Panther wasn't Leyland's finest hour. It was quite a weak chassis. It tended to flex, and that caused bodywork issues. Hulls, as we've seen, did a full service life. Hull didn't want to waste ratepayers' money by getting rid of fairly new buses. A lot of places threw the towel in after about 5 or 7 years with them and got rid of them, but Hull didn't. They persevered, and as I say, they carried on for a full service life. This is 103 B103 UAT, an Alexander bodied Dennis Dominator, one of the batch new in 1984, in December of 1984. As I said in one of the earlier parts of this video series, the first 5 of these, 101 to 105, had Maxwell gearboxes, which became difficult to get spare parts for. As a result, it was withdrawn quite early. It was withdrawn in March 1993 and it was sold to Ensign of Purfleet. And I think it stayed with them actually after that. But yeah, it was a very early withdrawal. Only managed 8 years and 3 months in the KHCT fleet. 124 now, C124 CAT, a Dennis Dominator, this time with East Lancashire bodywork. The East Lancashire E-type that was a copy of the Alexander R-type that we saw on the previous bus. I'll just let you compare the two. There's 103 again, and then there's 124. You can see there are some detailed differences. The ventilation grill at the back there for a start. The windows closer to the back corner, if we move down there, the ventilation grills are there. The grill looks a bit tidier on the Alexander product as opposed to the East Lancashire that's a bit more clunky. And the East Lancs ones did have the standard East Lancashire rear window. So 124, I think we featured one of the earlier videos. It was new in January of 1986. It was renumbered 224 by Stagecoach in April 1997. And it was withdrawn in February 1999, so it served quite a long time. And it was sold on to Northern Blue of Burnley. And it's in there just having run into Hull bus station on a 63C from Boothbury Estate. 63 will become the 2 when services were renumbered around the time of deregulation. So we've got a lovely scene from Hull bus station, exactly as a lot of us remember it. 130 is at the front, C130 CAT, another one of the batch of Dennis Dominators that 124 belonged to. This one was new in November of 1985, so as you can see they weren't delivered in fleet number order. This one had a short life with KHCT. It was withdrawn in July of 1993 and it was sold to Isle of Man Transport, where it became fleet number 53, registration number CMN 53T. They sold it in February of 2000 via the dealer's Ensign to Bristol Television and Film Services. And I'm quite annoyed I didn't see it, because I used to see a lot of their buses when I lived in Leeds. I lived along Kirkstall Road, and there were a couple of TV studios there. You used to see quite a lot of Bristol Television and Film Services buses there. Unfortunately, 130 was never one of them. They used it until 2007 when it went to Hardwick of Carlton, who scrapped it, unfortunately. It's a lovely scene from Hull bus station. It just shows you how it used to be. So this one is just after the time of deregulation. It's on Route 1 to Boothbury Estate, which had been 73 on the previous numbering. It's picking up a alongside the wall next to the railway station. At various times this stop was used for departing services, but quite often it wasn't. It fell into long periods of disuse. The buses behind it are offloading, so along there behind where it is was the offloading area. When the buses entered the bus station, that's where you got off. If you were really lucky to manage to pull into the curb. If you weren't, like the Leyland National stood in the middle there, they just let you off in the middle of the road, and you walked in front of the buses that were on the curb side and hoped the driver wasn't a psychopath who just wanted to run you all over. But yeah, you can see 519 behind 130 there in its Kingstonian advertising livery. There's one of the G-registered Atlanteans at the back there. There's what looks like a Metrobus. I'm guessing it's a Metrobus, not a Metro Scania, behind, because it's after deregulation, bad look of it. Got East Yorkshire Mark II Bristol VR. Looks like it's worked in on the 240 from Hornsey. There's the B-Series National of East Yorkshire in the middle there. And you've got a dual door Atlantean right at the back of KHCT and a single door one there of the GATN batch, just coming in on the 9 from Brandzone. So this was the chaos of Hull bus station. Locals were used to it. Anybody from out of town, they emerged from the side entrance to the railway station there, and we just met with utter chaos. As you can see, buses unloading everywhere, other buses coming in. They would pull in down here and let the people off randomly in the middle of the road. Just to add to the mix, the bit of road here was two-way. Where the buses are there, it was one-way. But on the left, off to the left, were the departure stands. So you could drive from the muck along in that direction to swing into the departure stands. So there were buses moving in both directions, people wandering around in the road. If you wanted to get off the pavement, when you walked from town, you came onto the pavement at this time. So to get to the departure stand, you had to cross the road there among all the buses. And like I say, we were used to it. It was probably a health and safety nightmare if you think about it. But yeah, if you never experienced it, you missed a treat. It was a magical place, quite different to anywhere else, really. You can see there the lady just nonchalantly walking across. As I say, locals were used to it. Now, about 90% of the photos I've acquired appear to be of this bus, 132 E132 SAT. We went through its history in one of the previous ones, so I won't go through it in too much detail again. Suffice to say, it was new in September of 1987. It was damaged by fire in July 1991 and sent back to East Lancashire for rebodying. It re-entered service in October 1992 when it was renumbered to 232 by Stagecoach in 1997. And there it is in Stagecoach livery. So it's after most of the photographs in this video. When it was rebodied, it re-entered service with two doors. It had a centre exit to make it easier for boarding and lighting on the ferry bus service to shuttle to and from the North Sea ferry terminal. That's what it's just worked. It was numbered 19 for a period of time, and it's just coming on that showing 19 Hull Station, so it's coming on the morning journey. So there's another bus that featured on one of the previous videos, 135 E135 SAT. That's how 132 would have looked in terms of its bodywork, not delivery, but in terms of the bodywork when it was new, because it's one of the same batch. This one was new in October of 1987. In 1989, June 1989, it was painted in the old streamlined livery which it carries here to celebrate the 90th anniversary of municipal transport in Hull. And you can see it there parked on the muck, the parking area behind the bus station, with a lovely backdrop of more blue and white buses. Got another one of the G-registered Atlanteans there. Another Dominator behind it, and then Atlantean 319 DRH 319L just poking into the picture there. Lovely. Still from the period when the buses were exact fare. You can see the fare box inside 135 there. And the notice on the window that would have read operator, sorry, please have exact fare. Operator has no change. The drivers are referred to as operators on that system. Another one of the same batch that was also painted into commemorative livery in 1989 for the 90th anniversary. This one is 136 E136 SAT, which was due in September of 1987. So again, they weren't delivered in fleet number order. And again, it was painted in the 1931 motorbus livery in June 1989. And there it is, looking lovely, just offloading in the bus station prior to another run on the Outer Circle Service 24. Both 135 and 136 survived into Stagecoach days numbered 235 and 236 in April of 1997, so they both had quite long service lives in Hull. And then we've got 144 F144 BKH, just running into the bus station from Bransholme on the 27. Talking of the chaos of the bus station as well, you can see the sort of drop-off point for the railway station there. However, you could drive down through the bus station as well. That was the access to the station car park. So as well as buses flying around, you had people driving to and from the station car park as well. So 144 was delivered in October 1988. It was renumbered 244 in April 1997 by Stagecoach, and then again 15044 in January of 2003 when Stagecoach started to use a national fleet numbering system. And it was withdrawn in April 2002. As far as I know, it didn't get sold for further service, so it spent its entire working life in Hull. Looking quite magnificent there, in a lovely azure blue and white livery. Another of the same batch, and another batch that weren't delivered in fleet number order because this one arrived in September of 1988. 147 F147 BKH, again renumbered 247 in April 1997 and 15047 in January 2003. And another one that appears to have done its entire service life in Hull. Just coming in from Orchard Park on the 5, the blind already set for the return working. Just next to it is one of East Yorkshire's Leyland Olympians with Northern Counties body 548 H548 VAT. It's one of the long wheelbase batch with a Cummins engine. When they were new, they were for the Hesel services 66 and 181. You can see it's just come in from Hesel on the 66. It's about to go back there. Numerically, the last Dominator delivered to KHCT 157 F157 HAT, new in July of 1989. Renumbered 257 in April 1997 by Stagecoach. And as we mentioned in one of the previous parts, it ended up being sold to the Coachmasters in Rochdale, the operating division of the dealer Houston Ram. They sold out to First Manchester in 2000 and it became a First Manchester vehicle. So it ended up working for First. Here it is. This is what I was talking about, buses driving both ways. Just off to the left of here is where 130 was standing, facing the other way. So this bus is going sort of into the main flow of traffic, coming off the muck to take up its departure stand on the 14 to Bilton Grange. It's looking quite sorry for itself. You can see the front upper corner has been bashed. So this presumably is towards the end of council ownership, when the fleet was starting to look a little bit scruffy. The bus war was taking its toll and the money just wasn't there for the upkeep. So this one's another official posed photograph by the look of it. I'm not quite sure, again, what the reason for the photo was. It appears to be stood on Champlands Avenue North, or Chance Ave North, as locals would refer to it, next to the crematorium. Again, it's not freshly painted by any means. It looks quite battered about. It's probably towards the end of its working life. I suspect it might have been one of the last buses to carry the Streamline livery. Although it was replaced in 1972 by the Hull Azure and White, it survived for quite a long time on some buses. I think it was about 1978 that the last ones were painted out of it. So it may well have been one of the last buses in that livery. But for whatever reason, it's had some sort of official photograph taken on Chance Ave North. As you can see, it's on a private hire. It was referred to as reserved on Hull blinds. So it's plate number 163, registration 9363AT. It was a row-bodied Leyland Atlantean. It was new in December of 1961 as fleet number 363. It was renumbered to 163 in July of 1973 to make way for deliveries of newer Atlanteans, and it was withdrawn in January of 1981. So here we've got the former 218 JRH 418E, another row-bodied Atlantean. By this point, Hull had started to specify this single-piece windscreen that were mentioned in one of the previous ones. This bus was new in February of 1967. It was withdrawn in July of 1986, and it was sold to Fylde Borough Transport in Lytham St Anne's in September of 1986, it became their fleet number 90, and that's how we see it now. It's as you can see, it's got the blind showing Squiresgate Depot, which was their base. They withdrew it in March of 1989 and used it for spare parts. As you can see, it retained hull livery. Fileborough used the blue and white livery anyway, so they didn't bother to repaint the hull buses when they arrived. They just put them out in the hull livery, took the KHCT markings off them, and there we go, ready to go. This one's at the back of the depot at Ferrens Way, in the backyard. Fleet number 247, registration PRH 247G. As you can see, it's carrying fleet number 25 in this shot. Another row-bodied Atlantean. It was new in December of 1968. It was painted in this Union Jack livery for the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. It carried a livery from May 1977 to March 1978. And as part of the livery, it carried the fleet number 25. Obviously 25 years Silver Jubilee. It was withdrawn in August 1990 by KHCT. They sold it to Bond Brothers of Willington near Bishop Auckland in County Durham in December of 1990. They put it into service in February 1991. Unbelievably, they ran it up to November 1996 when they withdrew it and broke it up for spare parts. And even then it didn't pass completely into history. The chassis and part of the lower deck passed to the Hull 245 Preservation Group to use as spare parts for one of the other vehicles in the batch that they'd preserved. And the rest of it was eventually scrapped in January of 1998. It's quite a remarkable story. Another one now that was sold to Filed. Hull buses had quite a reputation for being well maintained and looked after, so if they came available for sale, they always found ready buyers. And Filed took a particular liking for them. This is 296 WRH 296J. It's one of the dual door Leyland Atlanteans with row bodywork of the more modern style, as you can see. New in December of 1970, withdrawn in July of 1987, and as I say, it passed to Fileborough and became their fleet number 126, and we see it working for File there. Unfortunately, they broke it up for spares during 1989, but as you can see again, it's retained the hull livery. It's not been repainted. It's just had its markings taken off, and it's been put out into service. So as I've mentioned numerous times before, my all-time favourite type of bus, the Scania Metropolitan, particularly in hull livery. This is 401 JAG 401N, new in April 1975. Withdrawn in 1986, but reinstated in September of that year and put back onto school services. Finally withdrawn in February 1987, and it was sold to Nightline of Torquay for further service. And there it is, looking resplendent in the bus station with an advert for the blue and whites on the side, KHCT themselves in other words. And the archetypal Grandways advert on the front end there above the destination blind. Another one that arrived in April 1975, 405 JAG 405N. This one withdrawn in November 1986, and it went to Cam of Nottingham, who used it for spare parts. Cam's bought quite a lot of Hull Metropolitans. Most of them entered service, but a few did go for spares. It's quite a nice animated scene. You can see somebody buying a newspaper at the little cabin that we mentioned in the last one, and a child looking excitedly on at 405. Just a colour shot there of the same bus in almost the same location, just very slightly further forward, so that it's blocking the view of the newspaper cabin. Then you've got 407 JAG 407N. This one arrived in May 1975, and it was withdrawn by March 1986 and sold to Rollinson of Carlton for scrap. So I'm guessing it developed some kind of major fault, because most of the Hull ones went for further service, but that was quite an early withdrawal. They were more or less all withdrawn in 1986, but not quite that early. And as I say, a lot of them went for further service, so for it to be scrapped, there must have been something badly amiss with it. There it is in the bus station between runs to Greatfield. It's got an advert above the destination blind there for a really no-nonsense name. A window and door company. What should we call it? Windows and Doors. There we go. So there's 409 JAG 409N. Again new in May 1975, withdrawn in March 1986, and that one was sold to Cam of Nottingham, who used it for spares. It was mothballed for a while. It was sold in March 1987, so it was stored for a year. By the look of it, this is after it was withdrawn. It's on the muck where a lot of them were parts after withdrawal. As you can see, it's got the notice in the windscreen, stopped, unfit for service. So that means it's a withdrawn vehicle. They were moved, as I said in part 1, to Holderness Road Garage, which had closed around the time of deregulation. They were moved there for undercover storage. So it must have been there for about a year, and then it was sold, as I say, for spare parts to Cam of Nottingham. Just next to it is 284, the exhibition bus, which you can tell because it's got the window painted over there. So that survived into Cleveland Transit days, I think into early Stagecoach days, as the exhibition bus. It was also used for driver training at various times. And behind it you've got 305 ARH 305K, one of the early single-door Atlanteans, with the more modern body style. One of the second batch now, 415 KRH 415P, which arrived in September of 1975. It was withdrawn in July 1986 and it was sold to Cam of Nottingham, and they brought that one up for spares as well. Again, that was sold in March 1987, so it must have been stored in Holderness Road Garage for a period of time. This is a 1970s shot, you can tell because it's got the lettering Kingston upon Hull City Transport and the town crest there rather than the 3 crowns and the KHCT lettering up there. And it's just running from Boothry Estate on the 73. So the 73 and the 63 to Boothry Estate were routes I particularly remember these buses being on. So we've got 418 KRH 418P, again new in September 1975, withdrawn apparently in March 1987 according to the PSV Circle history. I think it would withdrawn before that, and it would have been stored for a while. Passed to Hart Coaches in the North East for a time, and it went down to Whippet of Fenstanton in Cambridgeshire in September of 1992. I don't think it entered service. It was broken up for spares after 2 months, so if it did go into service, it wasn't in service very long with them. Again, there it is on Route 73, and you could buy a new gas fire for £95 whenever that was taken. As you can see, the rows of stands in Hull bus station referred to as platforms, so the sign next to it says platform 7. That relates to the platform in the bus station it's standing on. Another shot of the same vehicle, this time having come in from Brandsome on the 33C. Advert on the side for Superdrug, one of the few things advertised on KHCT buses that we've seen so far that actually exist now. And again, it's slightly further down the same platform that it was in the previous shot. So the third and final batch that we new to Hull were these, the S-registered ones. This is 423 WKH 423S. It was new in January of 1978, withdrawn in July 1986, and it was another one sold to Cams of Nottingham. It went there in February 1987, so again it would have been stored in Holderness Road Garage for a period of time. Cams use it in service. They put it in service in March 1987, and this one had a strange end to its working life. It was sold to the Jesus Fellowship of Bugbrook in Northamptonshire in 1988, and they used it for touring round doing their religious work. It was fitted with coach seats and a kitchen area by 1991, but how long they used it for is not recorded. I remember seeing one of these buses. These fellowships used quite a few of them. There's one called the Jesus Army. I remember seeing one on the motorway and getting my dad's friend to slow down to about 35 miles an hour so that it would come past us, so we could actually identify which one it was. We'd come out of a slip road in front of it and just saw it in the rearview mirrors. So he slowed down to 35 so it would pass us. The driver, it looked absolutely incredulous because he'd not passed anything else. It was doing about 40 miles an hour. And obviously he hadn't had to overtake anything else. And he kind of looked really strangely at us as to why this little car was going along so slowly. But it turned out it was an ex-Tyneside one anyway. I think it was an RCU registration, not a Hull one. Another one the same batch, 427 WKH 427S, new again in January 1978, and again withdrawn in July of 1986. Another one that was stored in Holderness Road. It went to Cams of Nottingham in March 1987, and then it went down to Whippets of Fenstanton in April of 1989. They withdrew it in around 1995 and sold it on for scrap in January of 1996. It was quite a late survivor. And there it is on the Greatfield Circular 43C. Behind it is an East Yorkshire low height Atlantean with Alexander bodywork. It looks to be 895 AAT 395K. Sorry, 885, I think. No, 895. Yeah, I'm correcting myself. There will be a few videos on East Yorkshire coming. I've got quite a few photos and slides and things of them. So there will be a series on East Yorkshire coming up shortly. But yeah, 427 there, looking absolutely resplendent. Lovely red wheel disc there, just as I remember them. And then the last one bought new by Hull, 430 WKH 430S, on another route that I remember on, particularly the 10 to Gypsyville. That didn't go into the city centre. This is just coming out of the back of Ferrens Way garage to take up service by the look of it. It ran from Gypsyville round the outskirts of Hull to Marfleet. I used to travel on it, generally on a Metropolitan, from Cottingham Road down to Orchard Park to go and see my grandma. I always got disappointed when a Metropolitan didn't turn up on it. It was very rare one didn't, but sometimes an Atlantean would show up, or a Metrobus. So this was another one that arrived in January of 1978, and again it was withdrawn in July 1986. Stored at Holderness Road, sold to Cams in March 1987, and it was again went to Whippets of Fenstanton in April of 1989, but they didn't use it. They broke it for spares and they scrapped it in 1991. This is 1970s shot again. It's got the older style lettering on the side of it. You can see one of the Atlanteans with the flat windscreen behind over the E, F or G reg batches. And then just poking out the doorway next to it is 302 ARH 302K. That for many years carried the Mariner gas all over advert. And it survived. It was quite a late survivor of its batch actually because of the advert. They eventually painted a Dominator, I believe, into the livery. Now we come on to what was a mythical being for me. I was aware of its existence, or had been told of its existence, but I never actually saw it. This is 431 PKD 431M, one of the ones they bought second-hand from Merseyside PTE. It was new to Merseyside as fleet number 4031 in September of 1974. KHCT bought it in February of 1983 and put it into service in November of 1983. So they spent 9 months preparing it for service. Despite that, it was withdrawn with the rest of them in July of 1986. Stored at Holderness Road, sold to Cams of Nottingham in February of 1987, and this one was converted to a caravan by 1993. No one seems to know if it still exists or not. Hopefully it does somewhere. But yeah, it's again, I'd heard of it. It was on my little fleet lists when I was a kid that I used to tick bus numbers off on, but I never ever saw it. As we mentioned in the previous one of the previous parts, the ex-Merseyside ones had a different version of the livery because the side trim was in a different place, so the blue extended up to that. I'll just put 427 next to it so you can see what I'm talking about. As I mentioned in one of the previous parts, the side trim was there because it was specified by Merseyside PTE, because that's where the green colour would have gone up to on the original livery. That was the colour divide, so they asked for the trim to be put up there. Another one next, Merseyside buses, 437 RKA 437N. By the look of it at the back of Ferrens Way garage, this one was new to Merseyside as 4037 in October of 1974. Again, KHCT bought it in February of 1983. This one only took 7 months to prepare for service. It came out in September of 1983. And again, it was withdrawn in July of 1986. Went to Cams of Nottingham, unsurprisingly, in 1987. And it finished up down in Devon. Worked for Devon Princess Cruises and also Nightline of Torquay. And then it was sold by them to a dealer in February of 1989, and it vanished. Presumably it was scrapped. Just while we're talking about Metropolitans, this photo I showed you in one of the previous parts. This is the format 411 KRH 411P. By the time of this photograph, working for Bluebird of Hull. This photo was taken on the 25th of November 1998. It's parked just on the side of Ferronsway Garage, where it would have spent a lot of its early working life. Now, I mentioned I couldn't find the history of it. I've since found it. It had been misprinted in the PSV Circle book in the wrong place. So as we said before, it was new in September of 1975. It was drawn in July of 1986. It went to Cams of Nottingham in March 1987. It passed on to Charles Cook of Biggleswade in September of 1991, which I don't think we mentioned last time actually. They sold it on to Day and Elwood of Chatteris in Cambridgeshire in November of 1993, but they didn't use it. And it was sold on to Alec Head, who also traded as Reliance Coaches of Luton near Peterborough in February of 1995. We mentioned Alec Head before. They were one of the few people who I knew about without reading the PSV Circle history who'd operated the bus. As I said previously, I think they rebuilt it. It's got the window hoppers from an ex-Reading vehicle, and it's got the front blind from a London DMS fleet line. So Alec Head sold it to Bluebird in January of 1998, apparently according to the PSV Circle. And then I photographed it here in November of 1998. At an unknown date, Bluebird sold it on to the dealer Carl Ireland of Hull. It then passed to D. King of Glasgow for preservation by October of 2001. And it passed from him to the Glasgow Bus Museum Management Committee in 2003. The preservationist down in Norfolk bought it in February of 2005, but as we mentioned last time, just as it started to tow it from Scotland southwards, unfortunately it broke apart because it was so rotten underneath that when they started towing, the chassis basically fell to pieces and the bodywork, and it proved impossible to tow it, and it was scrapped. But as we said earlier on, parts of it were used in the restoration of London MD60. So it didn't quite go fully to waste. So back to the fleet number order. This is MCW Metrobus 501 LAT 501V, new in May 1980. It was an early withdrawal for its type. It was withdrawn in September 1994, still in Cleveland Transit days, and it was sold to Ensign, the dealers of Purfleet, who converted it to open top, and it finished up in Washington DC in the United States by 2007. Now this is an official photograph from KHCT, and the reason it was taken, it was the first vehicle in the 1984 livery. We mentioned this before. The previous livery, as modelled by 437, had the central band there and the blue finishing quite lower down. The 1984 version, the blue came up to the lower deck windows so that the entire lower panel was blue. Made it easier to repaint if you needed to replace one after accident. And they got rid of the central blue band. So this was the first vehicle, I believe, to be painted in this livery, and this is why it's got this official photograph. Lovely maroon wheels setting it off as well. The first buses to be delivered in this were the B-registered Dennis Dominators. But as I said, this was the first vehicle to actually carry it emerged from the paint shop shortly before they were delivered. It appears to be in the yard of Liverpool Street Works, just off Hesel Road there. So another one of the same batch, 506 LAT 506V. This one new in April 1980, so yet another batch of vehicles that didn't come in number order. It was drawn in August of 1995, but was reinstated in January 96 and renumbered as 162. It may have worked in the North East, I don't recall it carrying that number around Hull. It was renumbered again to 106 in May 1997, and it was finally withdrawn and sold to Ensign in April of 1998. It went to London Pride sightseeing, but it was burnt out unfortunately in 2000. I believe I mentioned this in one of the previous videos, that it was a bus you didn't see very often, and here it is making a second appearance, a different photograph of the vehicle. So obviously other people did see it, it's just I didn't. So from the second batch, 527 SAG 527W. This one new in March 1981. Withdrawn in February of 1998 and sold to Ensign. In around 1986, this one had an accident. I remember seeing it in the bus station. It had pulled out of one of the stands, and apparently the throttle had got stuck. So it was pulling out, trying to swing around the bus that was in front. The throttle jammed, and it just shot off sideways into the railings of the next stand along, and smashed the offside corner in. This appears to be after that incident, so obviously it was repaired, put back into service, which it was. But yeah, I do remember seeing it. Unfortunately, the Hull Daily Mail's office, the local newspaper, was just down the street at the time, and a reporter turned up in double quick time to take photos of it, which I'm sure KHCT were really happy about. But yeah, this was a bus, unlike 506 that I saw a lot of. 527 seemed to turn up quite frequently. It was always ticked off on my little list of fleet numbers. Another one of the same batch, 528 SAG 528W. Again new in March 1981, withdrawn in March 1998, and again sold on to Ensign of Purfleet, the dealers. I don't think either of them found any operators after that, to be fair. I think they were just scrapped at dealership. Got 130 in the background again, making another appearance in this video. But yeah, that's just swinging on to the departure stands that I was talking about to the left of the area that we've generally been looking at. And there's the last one, bought by Hull, 530 SAG 530W, again new in March 1981. Withdrawn in January 1996 and sent for scrap to Norths of Sherburn and Elmer in September of 96. Again, it was unusual for one of these to go for scrap. I seem to remember it was involved in quite a serious road traffic collision, and that's why it was withdrawn. And it was parked in a corner of the garage, smashed up for a while. So I'm assuming in the 8 months between it being withdrawn and sold on, it was used for spare parts. I keep mentioning my little fleet list that I used to tick numbers off on. They weren't full fleet lists with like fleet numbers, registrations, etc. They were fueling lists, so it was a list of fleet numbers. To get it, you had to walk into the garage. So I used to go in with my dad, and the office where you could ask for a list of fleet numbers, or indeed for permission to go around the garage, was actually halfway down the garage. So you had to walk through half the garage to get to the office. In those pre-health and safety days, nobody batted an eyelid for a young kid wandering about with his dad. It was just accepted if you got run over by a bus whilst walking around in the bus garage, it was basically your fault. But yeah, I used to go in there quite regularly, get a little list of fleet numbers. As I said, it was a fueling list. The idea was that the fuelers could put in how much fuel and oil they'd put into each bus every night. I used to get one of them and then quite happily tick off the numbers as I saw the buses. So 530 was always ticked off. It was another one that you saw quite a lot of. As we said earlier, 506 very, very rarely ticked off, and 431 I didn't think existed, but obviously I've just seen a picture of it. So we come forward in time now to the Stagecoach era. Buses still carrying Cleveland Transit livery, as we said. When Stagecoach bought Cleveland Transit and the employees' share of KHCT, one of the conditions was they had to use the blue-based livery for 2 years after the sale, and that's why the bus is still carrying the blue, yellow and white Cleveland Transit livery, albeit with Stagecoach fleet names. This one was new in September 1988. They were marketed as City Slickers, as we'll see in the next couple of photographs. When it was new, it was named Chelsea. They were named after exclusive parts of London. It was reseated with bus seats in February of 1996 and fitted with opening windows as well, and that's the condition we see it in there. It was drawn from Hull in December 2001, and it went with the rest of them down to Stagecoach Devon. So that's how it would have looked when it was new. This is 704 F704 BAT. Again new in September 1988. This one was called The Strand when it was first delivered. You can see the City Slicker branding on the front there. And this is the livery that came in. They were the first vehicles in this livery. This was a dual purpose livery. Only these and a handful of the Leyland Leopards that had previously been Kingstonian coaches actually carried that livery. It wasn't very common at all. But it looked really, really nice, as did all KHCT liveries. I never saw a bad KHCT livery, to be fair. A slightly later shot of the same bus. The clue is that it's got a Dayglow destination line in this one. So it's slightly later than the previous shot. 124 making yet another appearance in the video behind. And there's 705 F705 BAT. named Mayfair when it was new. So yeah, we had 702 was Chelsea, 704 the Strand, and 705 Mayfair. And there it is on the muck with that lovely backdrop of blue and white buses. And there's a later shot of it. I suspect this is in the late Council or early Cleveland Transit era. In fact, it is in the Cleveland Transit era because it's got the Stockton-on-Tees on the legal letter in there. As you can see, it's lost its fleet name. It's lost the Kingston-upon-Hull lettering. Still got its name, Mayfair. But yeah, it's looking a bit sorry for itself, unfortunately. That's why KHCT refurbished them. A lot of local enthusiasts hated the refurbished version of them. But if I just get the shot of 702 again, you can see how much smarter they looked after they'd been done. Staying with the laser period, these were some of the buses that Stagecoach bought when they took over, some of the new ones. This is 714 M714 KRH. It was new in April 1995. It stayed with Stagecoach. It was renumbered 20274 in January 2003 and withdrawn in September 2005. It then went to East Midland and to Yorkshire Traction, both Stagecoach subsidiaries, so it stayed in Stagecoach. And it was finally sold out of Stagecoach use to Holloways of Scunthorpe in 2010, and they scrapped it in 2011. I must confess I didn't like these buses when they were new because they replaced vehicles that I'd grown up with. But they were absolutely lovely buses looking back. Volvo B10M with Northern Counties Paladin body, built like tanks, solid chassis, solid body. Yeah, they were lovely in retrospect, but I didn't like them, not because of them, just as I say, because they replaced buses that I'd grown up with. You can see the yellow cabin just next to it as well, making another appearance in the video. Another one the same batch, 715 M715 KRH, again new in April 1995, renumbered 20275 in January 2003, and another one withdrawn in September 2005. It followed the same path as 714 to start with. It went to East Midland and Yorkshire Traction, again Stagecoach subsidiaries. This one went slightly further than Scunthorpe though afterwards. When Stagecoach sold it, which they did in October 2009, it was exported to Harare in Zimbabwe. So yeah, slightly further than Scunthorpe. You can see there the initial change Stagecoach made was just to the strapline. So the strapline there says part of the Stagecoach group under the KHCT lettering. Another one from the same era. As I said, these arrived just after I made the last video, otherwise they would have been in that one and not this one. This is 805 G805 JRH. New in September 1989, withdrawn in April of 1999, and with a lot of the other ones of this type, it went to the Coachmasters, again the operating division of the dealers Houston and Ram at Rochdale. They sold out to First Manchester, it became 4805, and then 30253 when First started to use the national fleet numbers. And it was transferred from Manchester to First West Yorkshire, who eventually scrapped it in August of 2007. In this shot, just approaching Monument Bridge in Hull City Centre, you can see it's still got its KHCT 3 Crowns seats. As I said in the previous parts, when the council sold KHCT to Cleveland Transit, they ordered them to take the 3 Crowns logo off the sides immediately because it was the council's logo. But they realised you couldn't change the seats as quickly as that, so they gave them 3 years to change the seats. So they haven't been done in this shot, but they would be done in due course. Another shot showing Hull bus station as it was. A gentleman just wandering out of his shop in front of 813 there, H813WKH. Just coming from Boothry Estate on the 1. This one was new in September 1990. It was withdrawn in May 1999, and another one to go to the Coachmasters. Became First Manchester 4807 and then 30255 under the national numbering scheme. Manchester kept this one though, but it was scrapped in March 2007. Just next to it is the service van of Metro Coaches, one of the competitors on the bus wars in Hull. They ran a fleet mainly of Leyland Nationals. They did have a Bristol VR as well and a Leyland Leopard, but that's their service van. Something a bit different. This is a bus that belonged to KHCT for a period of time but didn't actually operate it. They bought David Costa buses, who traded as CityLink, in March 1989 and acquired this bus with it. This was CityLink fleet number 3. Registration number 741DYE. It was new as London Transport RM 1741 in November 1963. It's an AEC Routemaster. In case you didn't know, I'm guessing you probably did, but there we go. It was sold by London Transport to Stagecoach of Perth in January 1985. They transferred it down to their Magic Bus subsidiary in Glasgow in January of 1987, and CityLink bought it in May 1988. As you can see, it carried this rather lovely livery of blue and silver. It looked very distinctive. You saw it around quite a lot. It's a shame they didn't get a panel beater to just beat the roof back into shape before they painted it, but yeah, it looked lovely. It's a really nice livery. So CityLink bought it in May 1988. It was sold to KHCT with the rest of the business in March 1989, but KHCT didn't want to run the Routemasters. There were 2 of them. The other one was still in London Red. So they were withdrawn and stored in Cottingham Road Garage for a bit. And then in July 1989 they were both sold to East Yorkshire Motor Services to go with their collection of Routemasters. This one became fleet number 809 with East Yorkshire. In 1994 they re-registered it PAG 809A, and they withdrew it in June 1996. And it worked for various other people, and then it went to Poland. It was exported to Poland in 2006. Just a warning, there is a low floor bus coming next. And there we go, this is Dennis Trident with Alexander ALX 400 body, fleet number 18435, registration YN06LMM. It was new in March 2006. In 2009 it was painted in the old Streamline livery, as you can see here, to commemorate the 110th anniversary of municipal transport in Hull, although it wasn't municipal by that stage obviously. 18434 was also painted in a heritage livery. It carried the Hull Azure and White, the 1972 livery. But yeah, it looks absolutely resplendent. You wouldn't think the old Streamline livery would suit a modern bus like an ALX 400 bodied Trident, but as you can see, it absolutely did. It looked brilliant. The bus is still in service. Unfortunately, it's back into normal Stagecoach livery. The Hull operation, having been part of Cleveland Transit a few years ago, it became part of Stagecoach East Midland, and it's still with East Midland. It works in workshop nowadays. It's been transferred down to workshop, but it is still in service at the time of doing this video in October of 2023. So for now, that's it, folks. As I say, I will do a 5th part of this when I get enough material to warrant doing it. I hope you've enjoyed looking at these videos. If you haven't watched parts 1, 2 and 3 already, then please give them a look. There's also a review of the Britbus Scania Metropolitan models, the 2 KHCT models, done separately if you want more of a KHCT fix. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the likes and the comments. It certainly brought back some memories for people and for me as well doing it. It seems like only yesterday I was stood there on the muck looking at the little maroon minibus in a sea of blue and white double-deckers with a green CityLink double-decker moving next to me. But unfortunately it wasn't yesterday, it was 30 years plus ago. You know, if I had a time machine, like a lot of us, I'd probably go back straight to Hull bus station in about 1990 and just revel in it all again. I wish I'd taken more photographs, but I didn't. So I've managed to acquire various ones with copyright from certain well-known internet auction sites, and I'm pleased I have. It's brought back a lot of memories. I normally leave you with some ephemera, and I'm going to do as well. I'll just dig some out. And there we go, folks. First of all, we've got one of the auto fare tickets that you would have got. I'll just turn it over. It's got an advert for the Crown card on the back of it. That was the sort of season ticket that you could buy from KHCT. Obviously in those pre-internet days you couldn't order it online or anything like that. You had to go into the office in the bus station to get it renewed, and indeed to buy it in the first place. But yeah, I thought it was quite spacey as when I was a kid, because the ticket machine was behind the driver's cab. You put your money in the fare box as you got on as normal. But on the East Yorkshire bus the ticket machine was next to the fare box. The ticket came out there. But to try and improve passenger flow into the bus, on KHCT, they'd put the ticket machine behind the cab. So you you put your money in the fare box, walked into the bus and picked your ticket up as you went past it. And I thought that was really cool as a kid. And then we've got a CityLink ticket from the Park and Ride Service 710. The printed sum of 10 pence, as you can see. That's when they were based at Cottingham Road Garage. You can see the address there, 56 Cottingham Road, Hull. Back of it, unfortunately, is just blank. But yeah, many more happy memories. Again, thank you for joining me. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.